Welcome back to the Everything is Energy channel, the KYBALION book read, chapter 14, Mental Gender, page 91, back reading. He is very apt to consider these internal states as identical with himself instead of their being simply things produced by some part of his mentality and existing within him, of him, and in him, but still not himself. He sees that he may change these internal states of feeling by an effort of will, and that he may produce a feeling or state of an exactly opposite nature in the same way, and yet the same me exists. And so after a while, he is able to set aside these various mental states, emotions, feelings, habits, qualities, characteristics, and other personal mental belongings. He is able to set them aside in the not me collection of curiosities and encumbrances, and encumbrances as well as his valuable possessions. This requires much mental concentration and power of mental analysis of the part of the student. But still the task is possible for the advanced student, and even those not so far advanced are able to see in the imagination how the process may be performed. After this laying aside process has been performed, the student will find himself in conscious possession of a self which may be considered in its I and me dual aspects. The me will be felt to be a something mental in which thoughts, ideas, emotions, feelings, and other mental states may be produced. It may be considered as the mental womb, as the ancients styled it, capable of generating mental offsprings. It reports to the consciousness as a me with latent powers of creation and generations of mental its powers of creative energy are felt. It reports to the consciousness as a me with latent powers of creation and generation of mental progeny of all sorts of kinds. Its powers of creative energy are felt to be enormous, but still it seems to be conscious that it must receive some form of energy from either its I companion or else from some other I ere it is able to bring into being its mental creation. This consciousness brings with it a realization of an enormous capacity for mental work and creative ability. But the student soon finds that this is not all that he finds within his inner consciousness. He finds that there exists a mental something which is able to will that the me act along certain creative lines, and which is also able to stand aside and witness the mental creation. This part of himself he is taught to call his I. He is able to rest in its consciousness at will. He finds there not a consciousness of an ability to generate and actively create in the sense of the gradual process attendant upon mental operations, but rather a sense and consciousness, an ability to project an energy from the I to the me, a process of willing that the mental creation begin and proceed. He also finds that the I is able to stand aside and witness the operation of the me's, mental creation and generation. There is this dual aspect in the mind of every person. The I represents the masculine principle of mental gender, the me represents the feminine principle. The I represents the aspect of being the me, the aspect of becoming. you will notice that the principle of correspondence operates on this plane just as it does upon the great plane upon which the creation of the universe is performed. The two are similar in kind, although vastly different in degree. As above, so below; as below, so above. These aspects of mind, the masculine and feminine principle, the I and the me, considered in connection with the well-known mental and psychic phenomena, gives the master key to these dimly known regions of mental operation and manifestation. The principle of mental gender gives the truth underlying the whole field of the phenomena of mental influence, etc. The tendency of the feminine principle is always in the direction of receiving impressions, while the tendency of the masculine principle is always in the direction of giving out or expressing. The feminine principle has a much more varied field of operation than has the masculine principle. The feminine principle conducts the work of generation, new thoughts, concepts, ideas, including the work of the imagination. The masculine principle contents itself with the work of the will and its varied phases. And yet, without the active aid of will, the masculine principle, the feminine principle, is apt to rest content with generating mental images which are the result of impressions received from outside instead of producing original mental creations. The person who can give continued attention and thought to a subject actively employ both of the mental principles, the feminine in the work of active mental generation, and the masculine will in stimulating and energizing the creative portion of the mind. The majority of persons really employ the masculine principle but little, and are content to live according to the thoughts and ideas instilled into me from the I of other minds. But it is not our purpose to dwell upon the phase of the subject, which may be studied from any good textbook upon psychology, with the key that we have given you regarding mental gender. The student of psychic phenomena is aware of the wonderful phenomena classified under the head of telepathy, thought transference, mental influence, suggestion, hypnotism, etc. Many have sought for an explanation of these varied phases of phenomena under the theories of the various dual minds teachers. And in a measure they are right, for there is clearly a manifestation of two distinct phases of mental activity. But if such students will consider these dual minds in the light of the Hermetic teachings regarding vibrations and mental gender, they will see that the long sought for key is at hand. In the phenomena of telepathy, it is seen how the vibratory energy of the masculine principle is projected toward the feminine principle of another person, and the latter takes the seed thought and allows it to develop into maturity in the same way suggestion and hypnotism operates. The masculine principle of the person giving the suggestions directs a stream of vibratory energy or willpower towards the feminine principle of the other person, and the latter, accepting it, makes it its own and acts and thinks accordingly. An idea thus lodged in the mind of another person grows and develops, and in time is regarded as the rightful mental offspring of the individual, whereas it is in reality like the cuckoo egg placed in the sparrow's nest, where it destroys the rightful offsprings and makes it itself at home. The normal method is for the masculine and feminine principle and a person's mind to coordinate and act harmoniously in conjunction with each other. But unfortunately, the masculine principle in the average person is too lazy to act. Display of willpower is too slight, and and the consequence is that such persons are ruled almost entirely by the minds and wills of other persons, whom they allow to do their thinking and willing for them. How few original thoughts or original actions are performed by the original person? Are not the majority of persons mere shadows and echoes of others having stronger wills or minds than themselves? The trouble is that the average person dwells almost altogether in his me consciousness and does not realize that he has such a thing as an I. He is polarized in his feminine principle of mind, and the masculine principle in which is lodged the will is allowed to remain inactive and not employed. The strong men and women of the world invariably manifest the masculine principle of will, and their strength depends materially upon this fact. Instead of living upon the impressions made upon their minds by others, they dominate their own minds by their will, obtaining the kind of mental images desired, and moreover dominate the minds of others likewise in the same manner. Look at the strong people, how they manage to implant their seed thoughts in the minds of the masses of the people, thus causing the latter to think thoughts in accordance with the desires and wills of the strong individuals. This is why the masses of people are such sheep-like creatures, never originating an idea of their own, nor using their own powers of mental activity. The manifestation of mental gender may be noticed all around us in everyday life. The magnetic persons are those who are able to use the masculine principle in the way of impressing their ideas upon others. The actor who makes people weep or cry as he wills is employing this principle, and so is the successful orator, statesman, preacher, writer, or other people who are before the public attention. The peculiar influence exerted by some people over others is due to the manifestation of mental gender along the vibratorial lines above indicated. In this principle lies the secret of personal magnetism, personal influence, fascination, etc., as well as the phenomena generally grouped under the name of hypnotism. The student who has familiarized himself with the phenomena generally spoken of as psychic will have discovered the important part played in the said phenomena by that force which science has styled suggestion, by which terms is meant the process or method whereby an idea is transferred to or impressed upon the mind of another, causing the second mind to act in accordance therewith. A correct understanding of suggestion is necessary in order to intelligently comprehend the varied physical phenomena which suggestions underlies. But still more is a knowledge of vibration and mental gender necessary for the students of suggestion, for the whole principle of suggestion depends upon the principle of mental gender and vibration. It is customary for the writers and teachers of suggestion to explain that it is the objective or voluntary mind which makes the mental impression or suggestion upon the subjective or involuntary mind. But they do not describe the process or give us any analogy in nature whereby we may more readily comprehend the idea. But if you will think of the matter in the light of the Hermetic teachings, you will be able to see that the energizing of the feminine principle by the vibratory energy of the masculine principle is in accordance to the universal laws of nature, and that the natural world affords countless analogies whereby the principle may be understood. In fact, the Hermetic teaching shows that the very creation of the universe follows the same law, and that in all creative manifestations upon the planes of the spiritual and mental and the physical, there is always in operation the principle of gender, this manifestation of the masculine and the feminine principle. As above, so below, as below, so above. And more than this, when the principle of mental gender is once grasped and understood, the very phenomena of psychology at once becomes capable of intelligent classification and study instead of being very much in the dark. The principle works out in practice because it is based upon the immutable universal laws of life. We shall not enter into an extended discussion of or description of the very phenomena of mental influence of psychic activity. There are many books, many of them quite good, which have been written and published on this subject of late years. The main facts stated in these various books are correct, although the several writers have attempted to explain the phenomena by various pet theories of their own. The student may acquaint himself with these matters, and by using the theory of mental gender, he will be able to bring order out of the chaos of conflicting theories and teachings, and may moreover readily make himself a master of the subject if he be so inclined. The purpose of this work is not to give an extended account of psychic phenomena, but rather to give to the student a master key whereby he may unlock many doors leading into the parts of the temple of knowledge which he may wish to explore. We feel that in this consideration of the teachings of the KYBALION, one may find an explanation which will serve to clear in away many perplexing difficulties, a key that will unlock many doors. What is the use of going into detail regarding all of the many features of psychic phenomena and mental science, provided we place in the hands of the student the means whereby he may acquaint himself fully regarding any phase of the subject which may interest him? With the aid of the KYBALION, one may go through any occult library, anew, the old light from Egypt, illuminating many dark pages and obscure subjects. That is the purpose of this book. We do not come expounding a new philosophy, but rather furnishing the outlines of a great world-old teaching, which will make clear the teachings of others, which will serve as a great reconciler of differing theories and opposing doctrines. Chapter 15, Hermetic Axioms. The possession of knowledge, unless accompanied by the manifestation and expression in action, is like the hoarding of precious metals, a vain and foolish thing. Knowledge, like wealth, is intended for use. The law of use is universal, and he who violates it suffers by reason of his conflict with natural forces. The KYBALION. The Hermetic teachings, while always having been kept securely locked up in the minds of the fortunate possessors thereof, for a reason which we have already stated, were never intended to be merely stored away in secret. The law of use is dwelt upon the teachings, as you may see by reference to the above quotations from the KYBALION, which states it forcibly. Knowledge without use and expression is a vain thing, bringing no good to its possessor or to the race. Beware of mental miserliness. They got me. Mental miserliness, and express into action Let's get you a spelling. Beware of mental miserliness. In case of the mispronunciation, the spelling is Miserliness. Miserliness. And express into action that which you have learned. Study the axioms and aphorisms, but practice them also. We give below some of the more important Hermetic axioms from the KYBALION, with a few comments added to each. Make these your own and practice and use them, for they are not really your own until you have used them. To change your mood or mental state, change your vibration. The KYBALION. One may change his mental vibration by an effort of will in the direction of deliberately fixing the attention upon a more desirable state. Will directs the attention. Will directs the attention, and attention changes the vibration. Cultivate the art of attention by means of the will, and you have solved the secret of the mastery of moods and mental states. To destroy an undesirable rate of mental vibration, put into operation the principle of polarity and concentrate upon the opposite pole to that which you desire to suppress. Kill out the undesirable by changing its polarity. The KYBALION. This is not the most important of the Hermetic formulas. It is based upon true scientific principle. We have shown you that a mental state and its opposite were merely the two poles of one thing, and that by mental transmutation the polarity might be reversed. This principle is known to modern psychologists, who apply it to the breaking up of undesirable habits by binding their students concentrate upon the opposite quality. If you are possessed of fear, do not waste time trying to kill out fear, but instead cultivate the quality of courage, and the fear will disappear. Some writers have expressed this idea most forcibly by using the illustration of the dark room. You do not have to shovel out or sweep out the darkness, but by merely opening the shutters and letting in the light in the darkness has disappeared. To kill out a negative quality, concentrate upon the positive pole of that same quality, and the vibration will gradually change from negative to positive, until finally you will become polarized on the positive pole instead of the negative. The reverse is also true, as many have found out that their sorrow when they have allowed themselves to vibrate too constantly on the negative pole of things. By changing your polarity, you may master your moods, change your mental states, remake your disposition, and build up character. Much of the mental mastery of the advanced hermetics is due to this application of polarity, which is one of the important aspects of mental transmutation. Remember the Hermetic axiom quoted previously, which says, mind as well as metals and elements may be transmuted from state to state, degree to degree, condition to condition, pole to pole, vibration to vibration. The KYBALION. The mastery of polarization is the mastery of fundamental principle of mental transmutation or mental alchemy. For unless one acquires the art of changing his own polarity, he will be unable to affect his environment. An understanding of this principle will enable one to change his own polarity as well as that of others, if he will but devote the time, care, study, and practice necessary to master the art. The principle is true, but the results obtained depend upon the persistent patience and practice of the student. Rhythm may be neutralized by an application of the art of polarization. The KYBALION. As we have explained in previous chapters, the Hermetists hold that the principle of rhythm manifests on the mental plane as well as on the physical plane, and that the bewildering succession of moods, feeling, emotions, and other mental states are due to the backward and forward swing of mental pendulum, which carries us from one extreme of feelings to the other. The Hermetist also teaches that the law of neutralization enables one to a great extent to overcome operations of rhythm and consciousness. As we have explained, there is a higher plane of consciousness as well as the ordinary lower plane, and the master, by rising mentally to the higher plane, causes the swing of the mental pendulum to manifest on the lower plane, and he, dwelling on his higher plane, escapes the consciousness of the swing backwards. This is affected by the polarizing on the higher self, and thus raising the mental vibrations of the ego above those of the ordinary planes of consciousness. It is akin to rising above a thing and allowing it to pass beneath you. The advanced hermetist polarizes himself at the positive pole of the being, the I am pole, rather than the pole of the personality, and by refusing and denying the operation of rhythm, raises himself above its plane of consciousness, and standing firm in his statement of being, he allows the pendulum to swing back on the lower plane without changing his polarity. This is accomplished by all individuals who have attained any degree of self-mastery, whether they understand the law or not. Such persons simply refuse to allow themselves to be swung. Turning the page. Back by the pendulum of people refusing themselves to be swung back by the pendulum of mood and emotions, and by steadfastly affirming the superiority, they remain polarized on the positive pole. The master, of course, attains a far greater degree of proficiency because he understands the law which he is overcoming by a higher law, and by the use of his will he attains a degree of poise and mental steadfastness almost impossible of belief of the part of those who allow themselves to be swung backwards and forward by the mental pendulum of moods and feelings. Remember always, however, that you do not really destroy the principle of rhythm, for that it is indestructible. To simply overcome one law by counterbalancing it with another, and thus maintain an equilibrium. The laws of balance and counterbalance are in operation on the mental as well as on the physical planes, and an understanding of these laws enables one to seem to overthrow laws, whereas he is merely exerting a counterbalance. Nothing escapes the principle of cause and effect, but there are many planes of causation, and one may use the laws of the higher to overcome the laws of the lower, the KYBALION. By an understanding of the practice of polarization, the Hermetists rise to a higher plane of causation and thus counterbalance the laws of the lower planes of causation. By rising above the plane of ordinary causes, they become themselves in a degree causes instead of being merely cause. By being able to master their own moods and feelings, and by being able to neutralize rhythm, as we have already explained, they are able to escape a great part of the operation of cause and effect on the ordinary plane. The masses of people are carried along obedient to their environment, the wills and the desires of others stronger than themselves, the effects of inherent tendencies, the suggestions of those about them, and other outward causes, which tend to move them about on the chessboard of life like mere pawns. By rising above these influences causes, they the advanced hermetists seek a higher plane of mental action, and by dominating their moods, emotions, impulses, feelings, they create for themselves new characters, qualities, and powers by which they overcome their ordinary environment and thus become practically players instead of mere pawns. Such people help to play the game of life understandingly, that instead of being moved upon this way and that way by stronger influences and powers and wills, they use the principle of cause and effect instead of being used by it. Of course, even the highest are subject to the principle as it manifests on the higher planes. But on the lower planes of activity, they are masters instead of slaves, as the KYBALION says. The wise ones serve on the higher, but rule on the lower. They obey the laws coming from above them, but on their own plane, and those below them they rule and give orders, and yet in so doing they form a part of the principle instead of opposing it. The wise man falls in with the law, and by understanding its movements, he operates it instead of being its blind slave. Just as does the skilled swimmer turns this way and that way, going and coming as he will, instead of being as the log which is carried here and there. So is the wise man as compared to the ordinary man, and yet both swimmer and log, wise man and fool, are subject to law. He knows, understands this is well on the road to mastery. The KYBALION. The conclusion, yet let us again call your attention to the Hermetic axiom. True Hermetic transmutation is a mental art, the KYBALION. In the above axiom, the Hermetists teach that the great work of influencing one's environment is accomplished by mental power. The universe being wholly mental, it follows that it may be ruled only by mentality. And this truth is to be found an explanation of all phenomena and manifestations of the various mental powers which are attracting so much attention and study in these earlier years of the 20th century. Back of and under the teachings of the various cults and schools remains ever constant the principle of mental substance of the universe. If the universe be mental in its substantial nature, then it follows that the mental transmutation must change the conditions and phenomena of the universe. If the universe is mental, then mind must be the highest power affecting its phenomena. If this be understood, then all the so-called miracles and wonder workings are seen plainly for what they are. The all is mind. The universe is mental. The KYBALION. That is the end of this book reading. Thank you for listening.